Hi, welcome back to AI in Your Career. This week, our episode is when AI adoption accelerates, culture becomes your competitive advantage. So, first, we're going to dive into some of the numbers on the job front this week, and then we're going to talk a little bit about where the impact is happening and what we're seeing in terms of who's winning with AI at this time. So this week, the news gave numbers that landed harder than expected. There was a major analysis of 18,000 workplace tasks where it found that 93% of jobs will be impacted by AI. And 30% face existential threats, meaning they will no longer exist anymore as jobs. So that's 15 percentage points higher than earlier estimates. The disruption is accelerating at 9% annually, not 2%. This may not be a big surprise as these tools increase in power and capacity, but it is worth noting that not too many people will go unaffected. So the scale of AI's impact on work is now undeniable. Cognizant's research shows that white-collar roles, legal, architectural, administrative, and clerical, face the highest risks, and tech layoffs continue. Companies like Block, Salesforce, HP, Klarna, all doing big layoffs, and the disruption is hitting some population harder than others. It's important to note 29% of jobs in female-dominated occupations are exposed to generative AI compared to 16% male-dominated roles. That women make up 86% of the 6 million US workers facing the highest job loss risk, mainly because they're in administrative roles or roles that have more routine tasks that can be automated. There's also an issue that women aren't generally as involved in the implementation and design work of these AI solutions, and that there's still a gap there, and there's still a gap in leadership. So gender parity is a topic worth noting right now, and why it's important to really look to balance that out across the world at this time as we're further implementing AI, or we're going to have a disproportional issue of who's impacted. At the same time, 63% of workers say they expect AI to make their workplaces feel less human. Skill erosion, job displacement, and dehumanization, these are not abstract fears. They're what people are thinking about right now. And it's important as leaders to understand what your people are thinking about right now. So otherwise, you're really going to block adoption. So psychological safety is one of the hot topics with AI organizations and consultants, because they're understanding that the resistance to adoption will inhibit it. The leaders that are winning aren't the ones moving fastest. They're the ones being most intentional about this. So research for time and organizational leaders reveals something counterintuitive here. Like I said, that teams and organizations succeeding with AI adoption aren't those racing to automate everything. They're those embedding AI into shared workflows and team norms. So teams with explicit AI use agreements see 10% higher adoption among non-power users and 82% better goal alignment. So without guardrails, AI can intensify work rather than reduce it. And I think this is really important to understand. If you just give your employees a generative AI tool to use and say, make something happen, there's going to be a lot more resistance and uncertainty. Instead, you should have very specific use cases, very specific guardrails that helps them to operate within ways that feel safe, that they can get trained on, they can start to get their hands dirty with before moving into more creative work. So the organizations that are going to thrive are those that use AI to amplify human capability, not replace it. So again, deciding when and how to deploy AI, building trust across anxious teams, navigating ambiguity are super important versus, just routine cognitive execution, speed of raw task completion, things like that as metrics. So where you invest your energy as a leader is not what you might think, because everyone's focused on, quantitative KPIs. That said, for the long term, you've got to invest in your people. So again, cultures where people feel safe experimenting, learning, and speaking up are going to thrive. And that requires communications that's honest about the disruption while also grounded in possibility. Of course, discernment is now the new leadership skill, knowing where to put an AI engine into your organization and where human judgment and empathy need to be a filter to address human outcomes. So AI adoption and its outcomes are not a technical problem. They're kind of a leadership problem, because leadership is something you can develop, which is good news, and can help you, again, create structures for your organization that set it up to compete and thrive into the future. So what can you do as it relates to your job and your career? Obviously, knowing if your role is at risk and why, and knowing really what your human value is key. As it relates to AI itself, you want to build your learning practice. Set aside time each week to experiment with the tool. So lean in a little bit, lead with it. You don't need to be an expert, but build familiarity. Take a class, do whatever you need to do to kind of start understanding how these things work and getting, your own experience with it. And then, of course, as it relates to your organization, seek clarity on their strategy. So ask your leader, what is our approach? What's expected of me? What support's available? And if you don't get clear answers, that might be a signal that there's work to do there. And of course, connect with your community, whether it's your coworkers or people find out how they're using AI, dive into best practices. Don't always try to reinvent the wheel. Again, we just went over the things that an individual can do, but I do want to touch on the pieces that leadership can do. So this data this week shows 91% of CHROs rank AI and digitization as their top priority. I have had these conversations without hearing what specific strategy is. So it's not surprising it's a priority. It's sort of a use or lose situation right now. But what's more interesting is how leading organizations are approaching it. So leading organizations aren't just deploying tools. They're redefining workflows, setting team norms, and investing in continuous learning. And they're treating AI adoption as a culture change, not a technology rollout. And I cannot emphasize that enough. It matters because without intentional culture work, AI can actually intensify work rather than reduce it. So tasks accelerate, expectations rise, people burn out. With intentional cultural work, clear norms, and explicit agreements, psychological safety, teams see better adoption, better alignment, better outcomes. And we say it again and again. So if you're a leader, this is your moment. The organizations that thrive will combine technical capability with human-centered leadership, and that's not a nice to have. It's a competitive advantage. So wrapping up for this week, again, we're looking to master the intersection of technical capability and human leadership, like I said. At HFOR Consulting, we guide leaders and teams through the human side of AI transition. So we help you design explicit norms, build psychological safety, and develop the compounding human skills that matter most. We do this a couple ways. One is we'll be starting and launching the AI career program to help you upskill your understanding of AI and what makes you uniquely human that you can establish your career around while embracing this new technology. And then, of course, for organizations, we do trainings and we do readiness assessments for leaders and culture consulting specifically to help organizations make sure they're really looking at the ways that AI adoption needs to go for it to stick, and especially given that it's going to be forever changing. So thanks for being here. Subscribe to our channel. Thanks for being in the newsletter. And we hope this was useful. And we hope to see you next week.